Hi, everyone. We are rocking and rolling with 3 of us actually in the store. And so we're trying to avoid echo, but please bear with us as we work through. Way to go, Adam. We're like 15 feet apart across the store. Oh, sorry, Michael. Michael says he likes the echo. All right, on behalf of Ada and the Main Street Book staff, welcome. My name is Beth. I'm the events manager here, and just feel like we are the luckiest little bookshop in the South because we're hosting this awesome book launch for Adam and his rock star debut novel, Surrender Your Sons. So just a quick intro of our esteemed guests. Of course, we're here to celebrate the one and only Adam Sass. We are super fortunate that he is now considered a local and pops into our bookstore regularly, but his creative pursuits have taken him all across the states and allowed him to collect a friend trail that seems to be pretty impressive based on the number of folks who are showing up for this event and who've pre-ordered the book. So if you want to give Adam a wave from your corner of the country, hi, Adam. Awesome. Adam is, of course, a writer. He chose that career over barista, much to our luck and a few Starbucks fans' dismay, I bet. Originally from Illinois, like I said, his creative career has taken him from Chicago to New York to LA, and now here where he lives with his husband and his dogs. He's also written short stories, including one that was nominated by Writer's Digest for the best science fiction story of 2015. Brian's given it a thumbs up. And of course, he's a Buffy super fan and a self-described gay geek. And so you can also hear him on the podcast Slayerfest 98. And we're here, of course, to celebrate. Now he can add published author of one of the hottest YA debut novels of 2020. Yay! And he is joined tonight. He's joined by the incredible Garrard Conley. Garrard, I'm sure you all know from his New York Times best-selling memoir, Boy Erased, which was then turned into a major motion picture. Boy Erased was nominated for a Lambda Literary Award and was featured by O Magazine, BuzzFeed, and Shelf Awareness as one of the top books of 2016. It's been translated into over a dozen languages, which is pretty impressive. What's he up to right now, besides doing some various local activism? And I just learned he can add poll worker to his resume in Georgia. But he's also the producer and creator of the podcast Unerased, which is a podcast that explores the history of conversion therapy in America through interviews, historical documents, and archive materials provided by the Mattachine Society of Washington, D.C. We're so thrilled to have both of you here, Adam in the shop, Garrard virtually, for what's going to be a riveting and exciting conversation about conversion therapy, but also about celebrating Surrender Your Sons, which I was able to read over the weekend. I got my sneak peek. And to me, this is a night to celebrate ultimately triumph. Certainly there's fear and a whole variety of scaries and pressures that the characters in Adam's debut face. But in finding each other, they ultimately find themselves. And so let's celebrate that tonight. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Adam and Garrard, and I'm going to give some instructions for handling your own videos in the chat to make this run as smoothly as we can.
Oh, there we go.
Right.
Oh, there we go.
Thanks, my mother-in-law.
That was Adam, how did you feel today upon the launch of your book?
They went like that. Like it just went like that. It was like being in a dream. It was really, really wonderful because and it's all kind of hitting in waves because this was such a long experience for me. Like this was like 7 years. I finished, I think my husband posted like a Facebook memory the other day where it was like, I think it was like on September 11th, 2013 was when I finished writing the first draft of this, and it was like literally exactly 7 years ago. So it was one of those things where it's just been percolating for so long, that there was a lot of unreality to today. Like it was just a lot of like, oh, thank you, but then like the more like it kind of started going, I was like, oh, okay, I actually need to maybe like step back a little bit and, like engage, because everybody was very excited online and it was all very exciting, but like it was, the day was passing so quickly, I did not want to lose it.
I love that feeling. It's also overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
You're like, you've done so much work and then suddenly here it is. And I think it's both everything that you thought it could be and also just like this unrealistic experience that you'll still be processing years later.
You said it best, like, because it was one of those things where it was weird for me to be saying this, like this is too much attention.
Well, get ready, Adam.
Oh,
You never
no.
know you've basically written, a great movie script, so you never know.
Well, I mean, that is the vibe. I want to catch that vibe, but yeah, because this really did. I mean, I started, screenwriting, so a lot of this, before I came right from screenwriting into books. So, a lot of my like my first draft of this, the terrible first draft of this was very like before I learned like you don't just write Connor enters, period. You have to like you have to fill it out. That's what a book is. So it was probably a lot closer to movie script last time than it really was.
Well, that's one of the interesting things I noted in my reread last night, which was kind of scary. I was by myself in my apartment. My husband isn't here yet. I went to Georgia to teach, and so I was like in the apartment reading it again, and yeah, I mean, it's like it's got all the triggering stuff, but also I was reading it, and what I was fascinated with was the way that you really embodied Connor's experience. So there are many passages in the text where we get what it feels like to be in his body. And I thought that was really remarkable because I watched one of your interviews where you said that happened to you in the first draft. It was very screenplay-ish. But then the book doesn't seem that way anymore. So 7 years certainly did something.
It's definitely like an aged whiskey. Like it's like, oh, this has been in the cast for 7 years. Like I think it's I don't think every book needs to take 7 years. Every book like takes its time, but I appreciate that because like it was something where it did need to, for whatever reason, my writing style, this book in general, like it just needed like to deepen because Connor's experience is and we're probably about to get into this, but conversion therapy has many different types of experiences, whether you're in it for a day like Connor is, or for like a year like some of the other campers have. Like it hits you differently, and there's different experiences. And I think getting to know you and experiencing Boy Erased and a lot of other conversion therapy pieces of writing really deepened that moment for me.
Well, I'd like to talk, before we get into more craft stuff, I'd like to talk a little bit about the research you did even while you were writing it or in the early processes. I mean, you interviewed me and my mom.
Right.
Was it for Attention?
It was for Attention. Yeah, we were doing, I did it for Attention. Yeah, it was, it was an advertising piece we were basically doing for Boy Erased, the film. And the idea, what I had pitched for that was that we were going to be interviewing yourself, your mom, and then several, other conversion survivors, real life conversion survivors. And very, very different experiences.
And how did your shaping of the narrative change as you met more survivors or as you had more access to them?
How Surrender Your Sons changed was so when I first pitched this book, it was like to myself, like in 2013. It was like, oh, I'm going to do this big revenge extravaganza. I'm going to do this like exciting thriller, and it's still like, I still wanted to do that. I still wanted to keep that up. But I wanted it to be like, you know, I included all this stuff. Like I was writing from a place of ignorance really about conversion therapy. I mean, I knew a lot about, you know, queer identity, but I did not really deepen into that. And so it had a lot of the, like, there was electroshock, there was the attaching electrodes to, there was a lot more physical teachings. It was a lot more like outright physical stuff. But like the more I interviewed the rest of you all and through reading and more researching over the years, it really just became like the program of Nightlight really toned down to this very sinister emotional manipulation only, that for you know, outright, you know, if a parent was, if they had like Parents' Day, and they were going to be visiting, like it would look fine, within reason. Like there would just be no outright, oh my God, the horrors of this. And that's a big part of the reason why it's so frightening for Connor and his friends, because like people already are like prone to not believe them. And if they left her and said, well, what they did was they made me feel bad, and this, it's hard to explain, you know, like, but we know, like, you know, by also bringing the reader kind of really first person into Connor's experience, what I was able to do with that was take the reader really through, like, here's how emotional manipulation works on you, and here's how you can be like this super self-assured out person, and then these tricks still start to reel away at you if you're stressed out enough.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciated that as a survivor, because it's good to see. I mean, I liked the innovations of your type of conversion therapy. I thought it was like much more interesting, but also, I mean, in like a terrifying way, of course.
Right.
Creative. But also, yeah, it was very creative. And I think in one of your interviews, you said you were inspired kind of by Lost. It's like a gay Lost.
It was, that's how it was pitched, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that works. And I think that one of the ways it works is that you've amped up atmosphere, you've amped up, like I said, the description of in-body experience, so that even though we're not in a physical torture environment, we are in a very physical environment, so therefore we feel the torture embodied, which I thought was great.
Yeah,
so,
thank you. I mean, that's a big, that's why the island is very, it has a physical presence, because like you're basically like, you know, if you're there for a 24-hour period, which this book takes place, and I've been, you know, saying that, it's you're gonna have to create that like really A24 horror movie type thing of just like, I'm so stressed out just from the music, I don't know what, nothing's happened. Like it's just like, there's the kind of vibe where it's like you just don't trust anybody, and there's something around every corner, and you are just really you know, you don't, like, there was, people are behaving in very strange, unexpected ways. We're both Lynch fans, so that's a big in Lynch films is like is how much you're like, just people behaving in a very unexpected way can create that vibe of I don't like that, well, something's happening.
Well, yeah, I mean, even though there's a clear explanation, in Lynch you don't get one, but there are some clear explanations for the behavior, and I want to maybe use this as a jumping off point to talk about the Reverend, and how you created him, and sort of what, I guess really, like, it's, I just imagine it's hard to create a really great villain. When I was writing nonfiction, you know, John Smith is not really a villain who ran my camp. I mean, he was, but he is now, you know, married to a man living in Paris, Texas. So when I was writing a nonfiction account, there was no access for that kind of tool set, right? Like my goal was like, let's humanize everyone. But I love that you created this larger than life character who sort of looms over the beginning, and it was really scary.
Thank you. He's yeah, I wanted this sort of like kind of frightening. I was even picturing like just someone who's just like has just a real physical presence. I continually refer to him like as a raven, or some sort of black death bird, like, you know, like a raven or a crow or something like that, just like one of those like omen. Like there is something about the Reverend which is like I wanted that, there's with villainy, it's hard because I have a very strong point of view about villains in that I get very salty when we do too much humanizing of villains, and then it turns like in fiction, like you're obviously writing about like your real life story, so that's like a kind of different situation. But like in like just the Wicked effect or something like that, where you have completely like
Yeah.
changed the whole concept of like this character isn't even doing a thing wrong at all. And I still wanted that person to be, I still love Wicked. Yeah. But that sort of thing, well, we've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot
Yeah.
of like, Maleficent, where we're doing like, oh my God, she is not even evil anymore. Like I'm there's a little part of me that's like, oh, but I liked when she was like kind of full evil a little bit. So with villains, I really, really wanted to be like, okay, well, I know I'm going to be bringing in different backstories for each of the people that kind of brought them into the camp, and like reasons why they were there, and like their different motivations. And it was gonna explain why they were doing things, but you were gonna be able to see like, okay, here's this humanized reason why they're doing this. However, they're still they're gonna do that self-destructive person thing, which is like, we all know people that in our life. They're like, oh, I understand why they're doing that. Nevertheless, they are charging ahead at, doing something that they know is extremely toxic and poisonous and hurting people.
Yeah, I mean, I think our appetite for that kind of villain has expanded since 2016
Yeah.
in many ways, and I think that we there's like it's a hard thing to thread, but I think what I loved about your book is that it takes a point of view very early on, where there's nothing wrong with Connor. Connor does have doubts. Connor isn't totally comfortable with everything, but there is a strong point of view that guides the reader into knowing from the start that there is a good path and there's an evil one, and there are people who are going to do really bad things. And I like that. I think that another David Lynch, connection, he does have that good and evil idea. And I think that we've kind of, as a culture, we veered a little bit too far in the anti-hero worship category. And so I think it's time in some ways to just say, yes, there are explanations. Yes, like everything is complex in the world, but there are truly people who day after day choose to do evil in the world. And I think that's true.
It's true. And, the other sort of little missing X factor, little spice that that this book needed to kind of get where it needed to be was this was a much more forgiving book 7 years ago. And since the last 4 years, it has become extremely, no, you're just trying to hurt people.
Yeah, I love that about
that's
it.
been the point of view. Yeah. You just need to be stopped. That's that. So
yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about your inspirations, because I've gone down a wormhole this afternoon. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We had an exchange on Twitter maybe a month ago where you were talking about the movie Jaws: The Revenge.
Jaws for the Revenge, yes.
Yes. Anyone here who has not seen Jaws for the Revenge, I'm going to go ahead and recommend it. You might hate me for it, but
it's on HBO Max. Go get it. Go fire it up tonight if you subscribe.
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Jaws for the Revenge, it follows the this woman who was she the wife in the original one?
Yeah, she's the wife of Chief Brody from the first movie.
Yeah, and so she believes that this shark that's still out there has some sort of vendetta against her family.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of proof that is offered in the film for that.
Kind of canon that yes, this shark is trying to get all the Brody in the family.
And it came as no shock to me. When I watched this when I was a kid, it was like a thing I shouldn't have watched. I was too young to even understand what was going on in my brain as I watched it, but I was just like, it was like my first experience of camp. It like didn't even mean to be camp, I don't think, because there's like that scene that you showed on Twitter, the GIF where she like turns around dramatically to like look at the water, and she's holding on to the mast.
She's like in full head to toe Gucci, like, cause she's like this, you know, at like this kind of Amity Island, you know, she's widowed, like her son is killed in the beginning. She's grief stricken, and she goes to the Bahamas and starts to like have a kind of a Roman Spring thing with Michael Caine, and
Yeah, I forgot about that.
it's she is like, and this is the movie that famously Michael Caine missed the Oscar that he won for Hannah and Her Sisters because he was filming this. But he later is like, I have no regrets on that because like I bought like my house with Jaws the Revenge money. So it's just really wonderful. But yeah, like so the scene you're describing is, so it's like the first Jaws where like Chief Brody's got to go out and he's got to, you know, that's enough death, enough. And like he goes out into the ocean to like really like go get the shark one-on-one. And then like she's just out there by herself in like giant sunglasses and like full like Gucci beachwear.
Oh
And
yeah, her clothes
and like the shark kind of comes up behind her, and then she senses it because they kind of have a low-key psychic connection.
Yeah, she has a
Shark
psychic
and her.
connection to the shark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then she turns and she's just like, it's
Yeah.
like Dynasty. Like it's like a little fear, but it's a little hate, but it's a little like we're gonna do this. So yeah.
I promise this is all gonna make sense soon, everyone. Did the shark
this is what we're talking about.
Did the shark explode in the version that you watched?
Yes.
Okay, because
I don't know how it exploded.
That was like added. Anyway.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, why was Adam really into this movie? It seems like there's something here because we like the same things. We always end up liking the same things.
It's very true.
And so I was sitting here thinking about Jaws the Revenge, and I thought, oh, it's like obviously a revenge story. It's obviously about inherited trauma over time. And like, I mean, in some ways in this story, you wish a shark would eat Connor's mother. But
it's very, yeah, we want the reverse to happen. This mom we don't want.
Yeah.
She's the shark. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I saw in an interview you also mentioned Inglourious Bastards, and I thought, okay, there we go. Like you wanted to create this larger than life, right? Nautically themed in some ways, revenge story. And and then
I'm very in tune to this right now.
This is my literature brain, I'm sorry. Okay,
right, this is great.
I'm gonna write a paper about it. It'll be great. Okay, so then the other thing I did was I looked up Michael Caine's other movies right before that because he had a flop called The Island. I don't know if you've seen it, in 1980.
No. Okay.
It's an action adventure horror film that was screenwritten by Peter Benchley and adapted from his book. And it involves an island where since the 18th century, crazy things have been going on with pirates, like separated from the rest of the world. They've gone like kind of crazy, and like Michael Caine enters this island and terrible things happen. I didn't watch it before this, but I did Google a bunch about it.
I would watch a trailer of that right now. Yeah.
I just think that there was something in the air, like from that 80s period that like entered your psyche
100%
and created this. Yeah.
Because something about this kind of era, like it kind of, it like a lot of like stuff from Surrender Your Sense like taps into a lot of like Lost, Jurassic Park. Like there's a lot of that just seems to have really like it's like saturated in my head. Like just a lot of just like high adventure kind of things, but like darkness, like really like something evil is other. I think it's just really, it's people like torn out of their homes. So that's the thing, like nobody is home when you're at sea, really, except for a few pirates. But like that's the sort of thing, and that's what this book is really about, is it's about people who are completely unplugged from their homes, given this culture shock on purpose to really get them into this different way of thinking so they could be molded more effectively. But then they're trying to escape home, but like the idea of home has changed, because what are they gonna do? You're gonna go home. Home is what sent them here. So it is
Yeah,
very kind of primal like that.
it is. Yeah. And I know that you did a lot of research for this book. In one of your interviews, you mentioned the camp in the Dominican Republic. I can't remember the name of it.
It's
But it was like a,
Escuela Caribe.
yeah, it was like a Christian boot camp, right? Which had some tangentially conversion therapy elements from what I
It had
read.
conversion therapy, but it was like in general, it was referred to in the doc as like a dumping ground for wealthy evangelical Americans. Like it was really like if you had a kid who had like a problem with drugs, or was in trouble with the law or something, or just was in general, and then that kind of included conversion therapy as well. I mean, it like they do to Connor in this story, is like he is taken straight out of bed, put on a plane, put on a boat, dropped into an island, and there you stay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I hope that readers who will all of your people here today will buy a copy of the book, I'm sure, and read it. I think that what I want them to come away with is that these things, however outsized your plot may be, these things have existed. Versions of them have existed. They still exist today. There are still there are still parents who send their kids off to Christian boot camp, and conversion therapy. When I was doing my research for Boy Erase, I did a lot of research after Boy Erase. I just had more access to institutions that would help me.
Right.
And what I discovered was that there were so many countries that the US exported conversion therapy to. US evangelicals did. And they were responsible for a lot of legislation as well. And so it's not unheard of, actually, for these pockets of underground, facilities or churches to exist, where this kind of, I call it torture, goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
So
torture. I
it's
mean,
not strange.
I
Yeah.
thank you for that. I mean, it's one of those things where like it is kind of one of those like I did intentionally make Nightlight into this very outsized drama, uh, going towards camp kind of feeling, because it really just to heighten everything, just so everybody who is reading it could just really feel it, versus like, I mean, Surrender Your Sins would be a lot different if it took place in sort of the strip mall that like where Love and Action was, where it would just be, where it was a little, you could come and go, and then there was sort of these sort of, I think in Boy Erase you describe it as these sort of like mundane
Hmm.
sort of suburban areas,
Yeah. Yeah. I
hellish
mean,
in
it
its
was,
own way. But
yeah, I mean, hellish for a young gay boy.
yeah,
Because you're like, oh no, look at all these fake plants and terrible embroidered Bible verses that are up on
so
the
drab.
wall. But, I think, yeah, it was hard. In my book, I had to really capture a psychological lens, like recreate that through a sickening uh, interaction with the environment. There was kind of like, I had to go all like, I had to describe like the left out hamburger helper that we were served, and like the greasiness of that, and like and then you mix that with like horrible homophobic language, and it does work in nonfiction.
Mhm.
Anyone who writes nonfiction knows you have to create a persona, and you have to lead the reader through the story in the same way that you have to do it in fiction, except that it's all true stuff. And that's a challenge in an environment that isn't outsized. So, but I think it's like there are different sets of challenges. Having your environment be outsized, you still had to create an accurate psychological portrait of this ensemble cast that had gone through some of the many years of torture.
It had to be lived in, really, because you had to kind
Yeah.
of enter, and had this feeling that Connor, when he's arriving, he's entering into a place that hasn't just been lived in for the people who are there, but that this place had a history that goes back decades. Because part of the mystery is he is exploring parts of the island that, and there's kind of little remnants and shadows, and a lot of this does play very much in concert intentionally with sort of generational, how queers relate generationally, how there's sort of that young queer people today are not really free of our past, that there is an inherited generational trauma. I mean, and that's literalized and physicalized in this, because one of the mysteries that he's trying to solve in this is this very old crime that's been unsolved for 20 years. And then he finds sort of clues about old campers. There's walls of former campers. There's little messages left everywhere, you know, old things. Who knows did they go on to become counselors? He doesn't really know. He doesn't, because it's one of those things where, you know, I think as a young gay person myself, like I remember like sort of this dance of like, you wanted to be the more you got out, you wanted to be part of this community, but you were also fearful of parts of it. You were fearful to engage too much in it, because you weren't 100% sure you could trust everyone. Because I think one of my things when I first came out was I was very much like, oh, you're gay and I'm gay, that means like we're all like good, and like that, and kind of a big part of this. And I think there is a moment that halfway through, I won't spoil it for Connor, where he, you know, learns somebody is, and then his first oh my God, great, that means you're gonna help me. And that is not the case. And I think that was something that I pulled from my own life, where it's right away to realize like, oh, well, you know, not everybody in this community is gonna help you out just because you're part of it as well. And that's it's not the most fun message to tell, but it is, I think, something that I had not really seen kind of too much yet. And I wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I also experienced that, obviously, you know, coming out after conversion therapy and dealing with all sorts of fallout from that, from my family and friends. And then entering these queer spaces where not only my trauma was present in me, but it was an entire room full of people who had been through different forms of trauma. And we didn't always understand each other. And I think that is really important to capture, however uncomfortable it is, because that's what we have to deal with as a community. We have to, you know, extend bridges between ourselves, and it's hard to do sometimes when you're dealing with your own trauma.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't want to enter those spaces, right? Like,
I mean, it's everybody's choice, really. I mean, that's the thing where you're not sure if you want to enter. I mean, and it really is. I mean, a big part of Surrender Your Sons is about, please make sure you go at your own pace. But there is also an element of like, well, because the way I feel really about being a queer person, being in the community and engaging, is there are two things you have to keep sort of equally in your head at all times. And this is just my personal belief, but this is how I kind of lead, which is, if you're not out, if you're having, or if you're just in different ways of wanting to engage with the community, you have to kind of go at your own pace that you feel comfortable with, but also always making sure that you're aware of if other people in that community are in a much more precarious situation as yourself, to really make sure that you're helping as well.
Yeah.
Like, can you, if answering the question basically, if I engaged with this more, would this help someone out a little bit more at risk than myself? And that's always going to be a balance and a push-pull.
That's true. And having that humanity in yourself, for yourself, you know, you kind of have to go from yourself and looking at other people and saying, they're not saying the right thing, they're not doing the right thing. Is it my job to call them out right now, or is it my job to call them in? And I think that's really important, especially for survivors, because I could not do this work if I shouted on Twitter. I couldn't do it. I just would be inaccessible to the survivors of conversion therapy, who are all lost and confused and probably saying crazy stuff that their parents said to them.
Yeah,
and hurting other people by
it's that, and then there's different. I mean, you know, like there's survivors. Some want to remain in the church really, really badly. It's very important for them. Some want to never see the inside of a church again. Some really, really try very, very hard to maintain a close relationship with the parent, even though that parent might still be a little difficult. someone, it's just
Right here. Thanks.
I wasn't trying to trap. This is a gotcha question. Yeah. Explore that.
Do we want to switch the Q&A so that people have time to, I don't know what the time is now.
Q&A time from Robert Stoffel. Let's see, what were some of the unexpected challenges releasing a book during a surprise pandemic? Surprise, it sucks. Yeah, it's the challenges really were, well, first of all the sort of usual avenues of, hyping a book up, events and maybe going person to person and that sort of thing were really compromised, cut off. Shipments have been like kind of, for a lot of people, especially people who were releasing books in March and April, were in a terrible situation because shipments were very strange and people who were ordering through Amazon were like blocked for a month. Like it was that sort of the thing where it was, that's been the thing. But the cool thing I will say though about releasing during a pandemic is that I'm very adaptable. So I think I was well placed to take advantage of like, well, let's try something else. What are we going to do now? And I think also being in a small publisher, you do like, going into this, okay, we're going to be nice and savvy. We're going to be great. We're going to be all this sort of stuff. So yeah, that's really been my stuff during the pandemic. We all make it work. And everybody really like supporting indies like Main Street Books and everything else there. That's been really that's been the best part about this. Not the best part of the pandemic, but it has really shown a light on like how much we really, really need to keep supporting all of the, and just how these local stores really have been, it's just about time that we really center them in that way. So I think that's been a positive. Alan says, why did you choose one day? So the reason Surrender Your Sons takes place over a 24-hour period, bits and pieces. There's flashbacks and this sort of thing. It's not like an episode of 24, or it is like an episode of 24, or a season. But the reason I did that really was because in my first version, Connor is on the island for 2 years, and it's a much more grim story, and you go through so many more changes that way. But the way I saw Connor is, and the way I saw Connor, the way I saw the camp is a house of cards. It's a tinderbox. It's ready to go. Like you see that the whole camp, the way they've structured everything, and the people and the secrets that they're hiding, and how everybody is wearing a facade of some kind that and the way that people are trying to get away with stuff that they have for so long, but kind of people know they know. There's a lot of staff members who are secretly doing stuff, and a lot of the campers are being really this, that. You see like how all it took was Connor entering, someone who was I think inquisitive enough and a little much of a kind of a mouthy spark. All it took was this one like thing happening, and then the house of cards tumbles. And then that's kind of why I saw that, because the reason why is it's also like I wanted every chapter to end on a cliffhanger. I wanted it to be this like serialized adventure thriller where it was like every chapter was like, oh my god, like something else is happening. And that just happened to unfold over a very quick amount of time. And I have had people ask me that, some people were, maybe not a fan of that, but, a lot of people have been a fan of that, because I think it really, like, the reason I approached it from that space was because it was like, this camp is ready to collapse, and all it takes is one little guy thrown in there, and that's what happens. So we see our next question from Jenny. So I've been doing the wheel in the wrong way. I've been doing one of the plot points in the book is sort of a forced outing for Connor. Did you put that in intentionally to show how it can be harmful? I mean, yeah. The situation with Connor is that when we start the book, he has already come out to his mom, and it just surprisingly went badly. And his boyfriend, Ario, has pressured him to come out, but he kind of did it in this way where it was like, you know, they're both 18. I mean, he's Connor's 17, but they're both like young, and Ario comes from this very, very positive, loving family. And I wanted to show that Ario came from like a place where it's just never been a thing. And for him, he's like, yeah, when you come out, like your life totally begins. And like, why would you stay in it? Like, it's great. Like, so for him, it's just like, he doesn't have that even experience of like, well, why would someone even be in the closet? Everything amazing is on the other side of that door. And so, and he also, you know, in the end, like he's dating Connor, and he kind of wanted to like, he was, you know, for someone who's out, you don't really want to like have to suddenly, oh, we had a great picture, I really want to put it on Facebook. You can't, because my mom is like, you know, and we've all kind of dated somebody in that situation, and it's just dreadful and it sucks. And so that is sort of the situation with Connor, where it's like you know, that, and this is kind of a dialogue that unfortunately is coming up really, really big right now. I'm glad we're talking about it, but yeah, I mean, pressuring someone to kind of go at their own pace, kind of as I was talking to Garrett about, which is like, you kind of do have to kind of hold both things, which is like, please go at your own pace. It has to be on your own clock. Don't make anybody else do that. While also like knowing like, okay, you can do this for greater good, but it has to be that person's completely their decision. And it's really nobody else's business. I had nobody pressured me out, but I always, you know, I came from a very like older school kind of way of thinking. I came out in 2003, where if I didn't have some kind of pushy, bossy people being like, like I might have never come out, and I, you know, I would have lost maybe a few more years. And when you're out, you regret every single second you were in. However, a lot of people are in difficult situations. So it's see how it's really like, it's very complicated. So it really has to be kind of that person's choice. I didn't really want to leave a like a definitive, here's my answer, here's my take on this. I really just wanted to ask questions, because this does come up. It's like, well, was it good that Connor came out? You know, no, because it put him into this nightmare. However, if Connor hadn't been put through this nightmare and brought to nightlight, he wouldn't have met all these wonderful people. He wouldn't have been able to revolution get started. So that is good. So it's kind of a, is it good, is it bad? It's kind of, that's why it has to be your choice. Oh, and another little phrase. Oh, okay, great, cool, awesome. Oh my gosh, thank you. Okay, so from Lev Rosen, Adam, is there anything you learned in your research that you wanted to use in the book but couldn't or was cut? Yes. So obviously this is lived many, many different versions. One of the versions that I really, really hated to cut, and if Drew Factor is watching, he knows this very well. And this scene will probably show up in another book, not a Connor book, but like something else. So there used to be even longer. There was a scene where Connor and his friends are put in a cage, like one of the cages, and that cage is pushed into a lake, and the cage drops into the lake, and basically the cage is drowned. And so there's Connor and a few of his friends are basically trapped and drowning in this lake. And it was this I wanted to just write a purely like adventure, like Indiana Jones, like how does he get out of this one? And so he does escape. And so there was a lot of research put into like, okay, well, how would someone who has only enough time for however long it takes you to not drown to get out of that cage? So that is something that I was very, very sorry to do too many things, too many. So that was something where I will see it again. You'll all see it again later. Kat says, can you talk more about the cycle of abuse and what are some of the overall takeaways you're hoping young readers will take away from this book? Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, cycle of abuse is something that is a big theme in Surrender Your Sons. It's all about cyclical emotions. It's all about like, how do you free of the generational traumas? How do you, when you are in a toxic situation, how do you extricate and extricate safely? and some people who are abused end up, you know, continuing that. And it's hard, but I wanted young readers to take away from this, and what I want them to see is I want them to see. One second, internet connection is unstable. Am I freezing? Am I good? All right, I'm good. So what I wanted young readers to get is, what I wanted them to get from this was, I wanted them to be able to see evil in their everyday life. I wanted them to be able to recognize signs. I wanted them to just show them that, like, this is what it looks like when someone is manipulating, and how do you extricate from that? That's what I wanted to say. So Mia says, were there any personal anecdotes or stories of your life you added to the character's development, or did any friends influence your characters? Yeah, so definitely what I did was, I mean, I drop little blips about myself all over the book, but I will say there is something that, you know, there's I added, I'm trying to think of like a specific example, but a lot of Connor's hometown of Ambrose is a lot like the small farm town that I grew up in. A lot nicer town. I had a much nicer experience than Connor did in that town, but I did need sort of a smaller farming town, and so I used a lot of the terrain for that, and a lot of the sort of layout and how Arios like lived miles away and how isolated you can feel during that. So that was something that was very, very personal for me. So that house that Connor is in, that's basically sort of brick for brick the house I grew up in. And we did live across from a chicken farm soybean field. That was exactly where I lived. So I think we'll do one more question. Oh, Maddie says, did I miss the lightning? Where does the lightning? Oh, so that is, if you read this in the acknowledgments, you will read at one point, Surrender Your Sons in the very, very beginning was a superhero origin story. Because I had in college written I had written a screenplay, and there was a superhero called Nightlight, and his real secret identity name was Connor Major. And in that, there were other villains, like you'll see in this book, Miss Manners, Karaoke Bill. A lot of those names came all from the script. So really what I wanted to do when I was like, okay, moving from scripts to books is I wanted to come up with like an origin story. And I was like, okay, well, how did he get the name Nightlight? And I kind of came up with like this sort of revenge, like it was going to be a lot more bloody. It was adult, like it was going to be like, he was going to be like 20, and he had been taken to this much more violent island, and it was just going to be this like raw bloody extravaganza. So and within that, some of his superpowers, he had superpowers that were sort of burgeoning, and one of that was lightning. And so there was a lot of so something that you will probably see in about a few months, probably around the holidays, once the book has been out for a bit and people have had a chance to read it and catch up, I will probably around the holidays, by the end of the year, as a little surprise, I will release probably a 1 to 2 page basically synopsis of the very first draft of this, and you will be able to see it's got Connor, it's got the Reverend, it's got Nightlight, it's got campers and they're escaping. Everything else is like an Avengers movie. So everybody's gonna have a good time with that one, but I want to wait until the book is out before I really flip everyone that way. So
Adam, we have time for one more, and I'm going to actually handpick this last question because I think it's a great one to finish on before we toast you and start the signing line.
Okay.
And that's from Jonathan, and it's, how hard was it to say goodbye to these characters you spent time writing? I was sad to finish and leave them, and I spent far less time with them. Or were you just ready to say goodbye?
All right, so this is where I cry. Yeah, it's one of those things where Connor has lived with me for like 7 years, and it's really just been me for many of those years. And then, you know, then I got an agent, and then it kind of became, then the circle kind of kept expanding. It was hard. It was hard because I love them all so much. Each one of them, there's 12 campers, and every one of them is just beloved to me. I don't really have a plan to write more stories within this. I will not say never, but right now there is no plan for that. But if there's an opportunity to do that, I would leap at it in a second, because I'm going to miss Connor so much writing him. But he's gonna live with all of you now, and I'm just so excited for you all to kind of get to meet him and everybody in the camp. Like I think that's the thing. Like it's one of those things where, you know, he stayed with me for far too long, and he really needs to go out and meet other people right now. So that's been wonderful, and I have some more characters in other books who do need my love and attention right now. So yes, feelings on that.
This was such an awesome conversation. It's been a treat to be here in person to watch Adam talk. We are going to start the breakout room signing line, but before we do that, if everyone wants to turn their videos back on for a quick minute. Yes, Garrett has his drink ready to go. Woo! Show us your mocktails or whatever it is that you have in your cups. And feel free to unmute and just like give a raucous toast and congratulations to Adam for this exciting book launch.
Cheers.
Congratulations.
Cheers.
Congratulations. I love you all so much. Oh my God, I'm seeing so many familiar faces. I'm so like, hey, oh my God.
Yes, and there are like 40 others that still have their videos off, but we're gonna trust that they're partying it up wherever they are.